So if you're wondering what happened to that homeless bloke who used to present this channel, I killed him, he's dead, and I'm going to be taking over from now on. On that note, we are reviewing a zombie movie today. Although, not the most conventional of zombie movies, it has to be said. I was definitely interested once I heard the premise of this one to check it out, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2008 movie Deadgirl. So the film was directed by Marcel Sarmiento and Gadi Harrell. It stars Sheila Hernandez, Noah Segan and Michael Bowen. So essentially, the movie tells the story of a pair of high school friends who decide to skip school one day and go and explore an abandoned mental hospital. They have a bit of a run-in with a dog, they end up chased down into the basement, and they get down there and they find what appears to be a dead body of a young girl chained up on a bed. When they get close, they realise that the girl is indeed still alive, and one of them suggests that they keep her as a sex slave. This drives a wedge between the two friends. Eventually, they discover that she is in fact undead. She cannot die. She is a zombie. She appears to have some sort of infection that prevents her from dying. And the one friend sort of develops a kind of recurrent interest in this. You know, other groups, members of their friendship group get involved, etc. The one guy, Ricky, he's still, you know, really upset about this. He kind of thinks it's wrong and wants to kind of put a stop to it. He's in love with a girl in the real world, which is kind of possibly one reason why he thinks this is so wrong. But yeah, no, the film's basically just about that. It's I've made it sound pretty thin on plot, which it is, to be fair. I'll go through the positives first with this one, because I do have a tendency to go with the negative first, but we'll do the positives first here. The first thing is that the acting is pretty much immaculate, I've got to say. The whole film is acted really well, and on that whole front it's really good. It's directed really well. It tells its story at a decent pace, even though it's a little bit lacking on story for me. It's really well edited, I've got to say. The whole film looks really good. All the effects are really, really nice. They all look really good, I've got to say. You guys know I'm a big fan, or at least the last guy was a big fan of practical gore effects, and there are plenty of them here. You know, missing hands and all of that sort of thing. And it all looks pretty good, I've got to say. You know, there's one scene where a guy's, all his insides basically fall out, and that all looks pretty good, and it's pretty grimy and disgusting and pretty fun, I've got to say. So on all visual fronts, and in terms of the acting, etc., this movie, I can't really fault it. The problems really come with the story. I've got to say, the biggest problem is that there are no likeable characters in this movie, really, at all. Obviously, most of the characters are guys who are raping this zombie. So that is, you know, your basic, you know, most of them are fucking arseholes straight off. And then even with the main guy, Ricky, who's the one who's kind of mentally you know, tormented about this. He's feeling some sort of dissonance about the whole thing, and he thinks it's wrong, and he wants these people to stop, and he wants to free the girl. Even he's just a bit of a prick at the same time, you know. You know, his stepdad, whenever his stepdad tries to bond with him, he's got a stepdad. You never see his mum, but, you know, you're given the impression that he comes from this broken home and stuff. You know, his stepdad's around, but he's an alcoholic and he's out of work. And, you know, when his stepdad tries to bond with him, he just shrugs him off, basically, which is kind of like, you know, there was no need for that. There's no necessity for that. So, I mean, that character is you know, obviously he's a step above the rapists, but he's still just not a likeable character, really, in any way. And that's the trouble with this movie, is that you just don't care about the characters in it because they're all idiots. You never really get to know anything particularly about the zombie thing that's going on, you know. And I kind of get why, because this is really the story about these guys. You know, the zombie girl is kind of an incidental element of the plot, I guess. The plot is kind of on the sparse side, so I think working that in would really use the time of this movie up a lot better, just to have that extra little element thrown in there. You know, it's easy to see why people considered this movie to be misogynistic, because it kind of is, really, to be honest. Ultimately, it's a film about a group of people who keep a girl as a sex slave. You know, on a certain level we're supposed to kind of feel sympathy for them and empathise with them. You know, it's got this whole thing about how desperate, you know, teenage boys are to lose their virginity. You know, I was a virgin once and I never raped anyone or anything, so, you know, ultimately you are kind of cutting off a lot of fans from, you know, sympathising with these characters, you know, frankly. And when you couple with that, obviously the fact that the characters are so unlikable, it just makes it all a little bit of a chore to sit through at times. You know, you find yourself kind of waiting for a gore scene, and just as something to kind of be a little bit more interested, so you're not having to watch a bunch of pricks do nothing except rape a corpse and be generally very unpleasant. I think part of the problem with Deadgirl is that this film contains a lot of elements that are kind of touch on touchy issues, you know, rape and necrophilia, but it doesn't really do any of them with a sense of conviction, and they're all things that have been done before. I mean, we've all seen Necromantic and I Spit on Your Grave, so it's not like these elements are something new that this film has to offer. And without wanting to spoil the ending, it is kind of not a great ending. It is a little bit on the sort of horror cliche side. You know, you kind of get a sense of, you know, a character kind of becoming a bit of a monster in a way, in the same sort of regard. It's not a good ending at all, I've got to say, actually. So overall, I've got to say that on all kind of superficial levels, Deadgirl is absolutely fine. It's a really good movie in that sense. Like I said at the start, it's well edited, the effects are good, the acting's very good, actually, for what it is. The trouble with this movie comes with the fact that the story's just not very good. It doesn't kind of stretch out itself well enough. I think that this movie is overlong in that regard, and it just really fails to kind of provoke much interest in these characters, and the only interest that you really end up with in them is negative. This is a very similar movie in that regard to Eden Lake, which I reviewed a long time ago now, or the last guy reviewed a long time ago now. So yeah, overall I've got to say Deadgirl, in my opinion, I'd give it about a 6 out of 10. I definitely don't think this is an awful movie, because it is very well made. The trouble is that it has some kind of, let's call them ideological issues. That's what this film has. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, why not consider leaving a like and a comment, and maybe subscribing to my channel. That'd be awesome of you. If you go down in the description, there's a link to my podcast. It's called Ironcast. It's all about music in its many forms. I'd really appreciate it if you go and check that out. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you again very soon.